Okay, you saw the title, you clicked on it, you know what Linux and the iceberg chart is, and this video will be about multiple facts about this Linux iceberg chart in the first place. And you probably learned some things from this video that you don't know, even if you're a Linux veteran. This chart was made by me myself, and I actually have it as a link in the description for you to use. And I'm not gonna stall any longer, so with all that out of the way, let's get in. Tux, the mascot of Linux, made in 1996 in a contest for the Linux mascot. It was inspired at the time by a time when Linus got bit by a penguin at a zoo, and over 30 years later, it is still the mascot to Linux to this day, and is a very popular representation of open source in general. Ubuntu, the most popular Linux distro, released back in 2004, has stood the test of time, and it's a decent option for new users to go with as the first distro, though it is extremely bloated and it has some other stuff I'm going to get into later, but I'm going to put ignore that right now. I use Arch, by the way, a popular phrase said by Arch users to flex that they know how to use the Linux distro Arch, due to it being a bit to its all, but in recent years it has become more of a meme, especially since Arch is easier to install, and particularly a meme around Linux and wider tech spaces in general, due to being associated with the average Reddit user and Discord mod. DistroWatch.com, a popular website that tracks statistics for nearly any Linux distro out there. It also has rankings for the top 100 Linux distros popular at a specific amount of time, based on votes from users on the website. It's a good website to find distros in general, and hell, even I use it sometimes. GNU, the name of the GNU core utilities, a project started by the Free Software Foundation. The core utilities are a part of what makes most Linux distros. 1. Making it a good old standard. Stallman, founder of the FSF and GNU, a free software activist, and that wants all software to be free in the world, and also open source, or he calls it free software, which means freedom, not as free as a beer, of course. KDE and GNOME, two of the most popular Linux desktop environments out there, where there are heavily customizable features, have a lot of support and stability. These two desktop environments are usually found on nearly every single Linux distro, besides its one built for that desktop environment in particular. And it's mostly based on these two distros when it comes to multiple desktop environments taking the basics, especially GNOME 2. Especially GNOME 2. Flatpak, a universal package manager that can make the same programs work without dealing with separate package managers all seamlessly. And it's usually pre-installed on most Linux distros nowadays, or in pre-existing package managers where you just install it straight from there. Rising is when you heavily customize your Linux desktop to be extreme links. Well, I don't even know if this is even usable anymore, just for show. And there's an entire community dedicated to this, like for example, Unix porn on Reddit. Linux Mint, a popular Linux distro that me and probably you first use when you switch to Linux, and it's due to its Cinnamon desktop environment having a very Windows-like design, making it very easy for new users to get good at if they want to install Linux for the first time. Linus flipping off NVIDIA. This is when Linus, the creator of Linux, flipped off the company NVIDIA during an interview at college because, in his words, NVIDIA was a pain in the ass to deal with when it came to developing drivers, and even 13 years later afterwards, this is still the case to play today. So
NVIDIA, fuck you.
sudo rmrf, a very dangerous command that completely destroys the entire root folder, which if you did not know is the backbone of your GNU/Linux system, and deletes the entire file, because for some reason the French language pack is so important to root for some reason. Window managers, an alternative to the traditional desktop environments that organize the windows seamlessly and against more easy device, specifically tiling window managers, and some famous ones are i3 and DWM. Year of the Linux desktop, a popular meme in Linux spaces about the year that Linux goes mainstream, and even though this is a joke, one specifically over 30 years old, this could very happen any year. Just any year now. text editors, a terminal program which is kind of like Notepad on Windows, but cooler due to its customizability and variety. Some programs that you usually see are Nano, Emacs, and what I use, Vim, a program that I've used in every single Linux video that you watch and I've ever made, including this one right now. Wine, a terminal program that allows you to run Windows apps on Linux. For it to work, you just have to type wine into your terminal and then put the exe. Of course, it has to be directed to the directory, of course, and it has to be any exe that you want. And it actually been forked into Form Proton, the compatibility rail that Steam uses to run games on Linux. .odf, the Open Document Format, is the main file format of open source Office programs like LibreOffice, and it's also the nation's standard way because the document's now in France, and it also works on Microsoft Word if you want to for some reason. Distro hopping is a mental illness that most Linux users suffer from when you need to feel to constantly switch Linux distros all the time. They might say it's for a learning experience at first, but slowly develop into madness or continuous reinstalls. And if you do this, please stop. Your SSD and USB is begging for mercy. Stop, please. Alpine Linux, a Linux distro, well, instead of using the GNU core utils, uses BuzzyBox and OpenRC, and also some other shit that nobody cares about. It's actually really good when it comes to embedded devices, like for example Wi-Fi routers, TV on sticks, and mobile forks of its fork, Postmarket OS, which is on some open source phones out there. Debian, one of the oldest Linux distros ever made, released back in 1993, it's also known to be very stable and very reliant on the server, but also has a very outdated packages. Debian-based distros is the fact that most distros like Ubuntu and Mint are just forks of Debian, but with some changes. It's just as simple as that, and by the way, yes, this is a fact. Rebecca Black Linux, a Linux distro themed around the pop orders that, unlike other distros of its kind, is actually still supported to this day, and has actually made history in the Linux community as being one of the first ever distros to make Xamarin the default window manager instead of X11, so that is pretty unique. Ubuntu Amazon Spiral. It's from a time where Ubuntu worked with Amazon by making Amazon a part of the distro itself, probably part of some server deal or something, like for example with the Amazon app and all, but also a data collection that was tied to Amazon servers through the IPs. But thankfully in recent years, they broke the deal and everything Amazon, including that bitch ass app, has been removed. So I guess Ubuntu is pure and have no spiral in it again. Hopefully. Revolution OS is one of the only Linux documentaries to ever exist, released back in 2001, featuring Linus, Stallman, and some other people that we don't give a shit about. You can also watch my video if you want to know more about it. Yes, I know it's a shameless plug, but again, not everybody watched it, so. Linux in GTA 4. This is also a real thing, though the fictional company in the game known as Emix.net is a real company that runs personal computers that is definitely not a parody of Linux. And it features some funny distro parodies like Redwact, Seekint, Slackcrack, hold up, that name actually goes called, and Commundix. So that's actually a real thing as well. XZ Backdoor, that happened on May 27, 2024, where malware got into the XZ core utils for a backdoor made by the NSA. Thankfully, it was patched 2 days later. Ubuntu. And Ubuntu forklight with an identical Windows 11 desktop license that looks exactly like Windows 11 itself, of KDE. But it's actually pretty known for shitty reasons, like its shitty business practices involving having to pay money to get like some premium version of it to access most features, and its insane data collection, especially to some shady Brazilian company no one has ever heard of. Chromium OS, an open source version of Chrome OS that is usually meant for developers, but also share multiple things with Chrome OS, including the data collection, but nobody has actually used it for development purposes besides FlyOS, I guess. The Pine Phone, a series of phones produced by the company Pine 64 that runs a Linux distro named Postmark OS. Remember them, it also has multiple kill switches, and it has things like for mic and camera, but it's also a bitch to get due to barely being on sale. NSA backdoors. There has been 3 attempts by the time that the NSA has tried to backdoor Linux. The most recent one being the XZ backdoor back in 2024 that I also mentioned earlier. Thankfully, all these were removed from the Linux kernel soon after being found. Suicide Linux, a package that once you download it on whatever distro you messed up, and if you mess up a command, the system will literally kill itself by deleting the root folder, making it very dangerous to use, especially if you use the terminal a lot. Xandra, a proposed mascot to Linux, where instead of a penguin, it's a fox woman. Wow, how interesting and different. Now, we got the biggest question of all. Is it ethical to goon to her? University of Minnesota banned. This happened back in 2021 when the University of Minnesota got banned for adding code to the Linux kernel after knowingly submitting code with vulnerabilities in them because they did an experiment to see if they could compromise an open source project, and they thought it was a great idea to go with the Linux kernel, you know, the most popular open source project in the world. So they obviously got banned. I don't know if they're still banned to this day. I'm too lazy to check, so I'm just gonna put an image on screen just in case they are. Who really knows? Apartheid Linux, a Linux distro for true aliens that is actually very lightweight and privacy respecting in the forms of running the LXDE desktop environment, making it that it doesn't consume that much RAM, and Tor being the default browser for private browsing only, and the whole thing solely runs on RAM, so it's actually pretty good for privacy and distro wise, especially for aliens like myself. Linux on Mars. Linux is actually in Mars in the form of the Mars rover from NASA. That's actually runs a Linux distro, as NASA has been using Linux on nearly all the computers since actually the mid-90s. This actually makes it the first ever operating system to run in a planet, showing that Windows users can't spray. The Boston Celtics Ubuntu chant. Yes, I know this is a bit of a stretch and probably a coincidence, but I'm still going to use it anyway since it's funny. But in the 2007 to 2008 season in the NBA, the Boston Celtics used the chant Ubuntu before games started, and it also won the NBA Finals that year, making a good luck charm against the Los Angeles Lakers. And I actually wonder how many players discovered the distro because of it, since it is the first thing that you search up when you use any search engine like Google, DuckDuckGo, SearchX, or whatever the hell else you use. The original license to Linux. It might seem a bit shocking, but Linux was not always under the GPO, as it had its own license for its first year of existence that did not allow commercial distribution, as Linux only saw as a hobby project at the time, but it did change to the GPO a year later after Linux was first made. Ubuntu Cola. Yes, this was a real drink that you could buy, especially in retail from Europe, from 2007 to 2019. It was actually the first soda to be certified by the Fair Trade Foundation to be sold in the UK ever. And even though it's named directly after the distro, not a coincidence, the drink is not open source itself. And yes, there is such a thing as an open source soda. Android Dev Screen is an error that shows tux, meaning that some system files, including the kernel, have most likely been corrupted, and it shows tux due to Android using the Linux kernel, but that's pretty much common knowledge by now. But if you get this dev screen, you're pretty much cooked. Al Murdoch suicide. Al Murdoch was the founder of Linux distro Debian, and actually made some disturbing tweets in 2015 referring to killing himself later that night, as he did by hanging himself with a vacuum cleaner cord. Before that though, he was actually detained by San Francisco police after a drunk break-in, and actually became very violent while being detained by said police. And actually had a history of alcohol abuse, physiological disorders, and Asperger's syndrome. Even though he went through a lot of fucked up bullshit, he is still the creator of one of the best Linux distros at one time. And still, rest in peace to Al Murdoch. Wow. What a way to end the video, to say the least. Well, if you actually really enjoyed this video a lot, actually consider checking out my other stuff. Trust me, they're actually pretty decent. Plus, this video was a bitch to make, so I hope it was worth watching. And maybe consider subscribing or some shit. Who knows? Maybe I have some other good stuff coming on the way. Who actually knows? Jesus Christ, why did I say that like 3 times in a row? And keep using Linux, my brothers, and have a wonderful day.